teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses. Good morning, everyone. So we have Miss Marsharae Cage here. So Marsharae was here earlier, and so we have her back again because she's amazing. And so, Marsharae, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Marsharae Cage. I'm a registered nurse. I've been nursing for almost 20 years now that I think of it, since 2005. And I started off as an LPN actually, and I kind of worked my way up. So BSN degree since 2012. And I've just been working my way through the ranks. So I've done everything, pretty much everything in nursing. I've worked in long-term care is where I started, skilled nursing facilities. I've worked med surge, telemetry, you name it, I've done it. Labor and delivery, pediatrics, and now currently I'm full-time on the telemetry floor. So this is taking care of our cardiac patients. And sometime in the midst of doing all that over the past 20 years, I've decided to open my own training academy for some entry level healthcare. So we're starting off with certified nurse aides, um, CPR, and we are looking to add phlebotomy this year.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Now, we always go back to the roots. So why did you even become a nurse? So tell us a little bit about that.
Why did I become a nurse? Nursing actually was not my first choice in life. I always saw myself as you know how they say envision it first, and I always envisioned myself as a businesswoman or what I thought would be a businesswoman. So what that looked like for me was getting out of a nice car. When you open the door, the first thing you see is my stilettos kick out, my briefcase, and I'm walking with my cell phone, and I'm going to handle some kind of business. I wasn't sure what it was, but that's how I always envisioned myself. And I guess I came full circle, and we'll, I guess, touch on that in a little bit. But nursing was encouraged by my mom because people in that generation, it was go to school, it was go to college, get a degree, and get a good job and work. And the options that she gave me was nursing or something in the medical field or mortician. Because two things is going to happen: people are going to get sick and people are going to die. And so she was looking at some stability. You'll always have work. And fast forward almost 20 years, that has proven to be true time and time again, with especially with the latest pandemic that happened. Even though I was at work absolutely terrified, but I had a job, and she was right.
So I wanted to get into one of the things that we talked about when we first talked. We talked about you, your daughter. So give us a little bit about your daughter. So how old is your daughter now?
Oh, let's fast forward, girl. She's almost 21 now. She is April the 2nd. She'll be 21. So um she has been a challenge to say the least, but not intentionally on her part. But she's had quite the time throughout her life. First being diagnosed with dyslexia early on in life, and so that was a challenge in and of itself, which is why I thank God for nursing, because it allowed me to have the flexibility to be able to work untraditional hours, if that makes sense, so I can be available to help her with schoolwork. And um, I pretty much worked the weekends for the majority of her school career. And then, just to assist with that, because it that was tough, especially being in the public school system, because just being, transparent and quite honest, they were not equipped, in my opinion, to um, provide whatever services she needed, as far as her education was concerned. And then so we transitioned to private school, which cost a pretty penny. And so again, thank God for nursing, because one thing we had was some extra shifts to pick up, um, to be able to cover and assist with the financial burden of that. But then um, during the course of that, while she was in school, she had some medical issues, that we still don't have a clear diagnosis of what was going on. But long story short, one day she called me and um, let me know that she was trying to go to the kitchen to get something to drink, and she felt like she was going to faint. And so I left the school at that time, my school, to come and check on her. And we went to the emergency room, and at this point her blood pressure, if I'm not mistaken, was like 60 over 40, and she had gone into kidney failure. And of course they kept her. She ended up in the ICU for 7 days, um, and progressed to liver failure and was going into heart failure. So her lab work was all over the place, and they thought maybe it was something autoimmune. They thought maybe it was COVID. They tested her in every orifice, tested for whatever. And other than her lab work being off, everything came out good. But we still don't know to this day what caused that. So they just chucked it up and said that it was long COVID, because she did have the antibodies. So at some point she was positive for COVID, or she had COVID. But the um, the test that she was taking at that point was still saying negative. They just, saw it in her blood work. And so, um, yeah, that was tough, because even during the ICU stint, we still had to go through, when they downgraded her to the regular floor. Thank God when she pulled through that, and then she still couldn't go right away, back to school. And so thankfully the school where she was gracious enough to. I mean, she had teachers working with her after school. One would work with her on Saturdays, because this is her graduation year, by the way. And so we were just trying to get her to the point where she can graduate, because I mean she had missed almost a month of school, just going through that ordeal and trying to recover.
That's got to be frustrating, not to know exactly what caused that, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very much so. It's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, you're glad they can't find anything, um,
Mhm.
because you obviously you don't want her to have whatever it is. But on the other hand, you kind of want them to find something, because then at least that way you'll know what to treat. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of know what direction to go in.
Right. I love that. And that is so true. That reminds me of this kid that came in. She was 2 years old. So she came rolling in, and I remember I was in an intensive room, and I was taking care of this girl who really had put her arm through a window, right? And so she had her arm it was laid open. And
Mm.
the charge nurse kept saying, I need this room, I need this room. Well, this was she was a teenager. And so I was like, do you not see what I'm doing? Right? Like,
See what's going on here.
she was like, and she wouldn't ever tell me. And then finally she said, well, we got a 2-year-old that's not breathing. I said, oh, what that truck said. So I
Hmm.
looked, right? And so she came in, and when she got in, she was on the stretcher, and she, like, if you left her alone, she would stop breathing. Now, when you tried to mess with her, like, as soon as her breathing started slowing down, then we would try to go back in and, perform the treatment modalities. And then she would wake up and start breathing really fast, and she would be fighting us like she was going at us, right? And so then I was like, well, okay, so then we take hands off.
Mhm.
Breathe it, eventually start slowing down again. So, we knew that we had to protect her airway, right?
Mhm.
We ever found out what was wrong. They think that she may have gotten into something at that time that she didn't know that it was a bad thing. You know what I'm saying?
Very, very well could have been.
So yeah, that is just crazy. Now I love how you said that when you were younger, you thought that you were going to be a businesswoman and you would kick the door open of the luxurious car with your
Oh, yes,
stilettos,
ma'am.
probably red bottoms,
Oh, yes, ma'am.
right? Red bottoms. And then,
Mhm.
so now you come back to that because that's what you originally wanted to do.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about how this even started. Why did you even start the school?
Well, I never really, really got rid of the business bug. I think it just kind of lied dormant for years and years. And so, throughout all these years of nursing and working in all these different areas and departments that I mentioned earlier, I saw a trend, several trends actually. One was there was always a need for staff, particularly nursing, and under that umbrella, there was the LPNs and CNAs, registered nurses too, but I didn't see as much of a shortage in those in the areas where I worked, um, as I did with the other two, but particularly CNAs. And in one place where I worked, where I was the director of nursing, and mind you, after nursing for almost 10 years, doing all these other things, I decided to get off the floor and kind of get more of an administrative role, because at that point I was on this kick of African American nurses in leadership and the lack thereof, and so I kind of worked my way through that. So I was like, okay, well, let me try my hand. Actually, it kind of fell in my lap. The director at the facility where I worked quit with no notice. Because she had had enough of it, and somebody recommended me, one of the other nurses that worked at the facility, and she came to me one day and she was like, "I just want to give you a heads up, so and so quit," which is when I found out that nurse had quit at that point. And she said, "And I think you would make a great replacement, and I recommended you." And so, long story short, I ended up being the director at that facility. With that said, um, you know, you're taking the brunt of everything. You are responsible for everybody, including their wins and their mistakes as well. With that said, too, I was able to notice, when I'm addressing these grievances, these falls, these incident reports, it was all tied back to one person, or one group of people, which started with the CNAs. And so, um, with that said, even let's say, for example, the falls, there was no real training, I don't feel like, on how do you address that. Meaning, if a patient falls, you report this immediately. You don't try to pick them up yourself. You get a nurse. We do vital signs, et cetera, et cetera. And so I noticed the nurses were having to do a lot of education on that. Also, they were having to do a lot of education on vital signs. So I don't know if these vital signs were just being made up, or if this was the actual vital sign and you didn't have, the wherewithal or to know that this is not normal and this is something that you should report immediately. And so, with all the education that I found myself having to do with certified nurse aides and some of the nurses as well, I'm not going to say it was just the CNAs, but for the most part, it was the CNAs that I found myself having to do a lot of education with, and almost the same education repeatedly. And so I remember one day telling one of the nurses that I was working with, you know what, I'm going to open my own school because I don't know who is training these people. I don't know where they're getting their certification from, but something as simple as a set of vitals, which is vitally important, by the way. But so I'm saying simple, but something as baseline, because it's one of the first things they learn, as a set of vital signs was being done incorrectly. And so, we were facing, it's been, I don't know, almost 8 years since then. And even now, today, I'm still named in a lawsuit from this facility where there was a family member who ended up losing the family member as a result of, an incident that happened. And because I was the director of nursing, and I actually remember this patient because of her name was so, she's still, I've never met anybody else with her name. Um, but because I was anybody, first of all, just for the people out here, even if you've never taken care of that patient or you've only taken care of that patient once, if your name is on their chart anywhere, you will be named in that suit and you would be deposed. So, and that's what happened. I did. We were happened to be short, and I was doing the admissions to help the charge nurse, and I admitted this patient, and that was the only time I took care of that patient, and my name was named in that lawsuit. Um, but because of some things that happened, and again, this was several years ago, but litigation can linger on for years and years. That's why your documentation is so important. And I teach that to my students as well. I do have an attorney that come out and talk about why documentation is so important, even as a certified nurse aide. But as I was looking through that chart, I'm noticing some of the same trends, some of the lack of documentation that should have been there, not just from the certified nurse aides, but from the nurses as well. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what led me up to opening my school, because I wanted to teach these CNAs better. I wanted them to have a strong foundation. I wanted them to have some compassion. And I tell them, I mean, I understand that, I can teach competency, but you have to come prepackaged with compassion. And so I just wanted to make sure that we had some competent people, because I know at some point I have family that, my daughter, case in point, um, that's going to need somebody competent and compassionate to take care of them. My mom, probably me at some point. And so that was the motivation behind that.
One of the things that I'm very clear on is that, and it comes when I'm hiring people for the company. One of
Hmm.
the things that I'm very clear on is that I will hire you because of passion, even sometimes because I can teach you how to work the job,
Hmm.
but I can't teach you how to be passionate about the job.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to come prepackaged with that.
Passionate about the job, then that turns things around and I'm able to, we're able to work things out. But if
Hmm.
at any point, at any point, see that you are no longer compassionate about it, then it's time for us to part ways, right?
Indeed.
Lovingly fire you, but fire you, right? Because we can't work with, because at some point in time, the confidence has to come into play for sure. So that is definitely, for sure, one of those things. I remember a guy that he was, I wrote him up for not for lack of documentation. Like he was,
Hmm.
because at that time we had a system where it dropped vital signs into the computer, so he didn't really have to go to the room to
Hmm.
see the patient. It just dropped the vital signs, and like this dude would just like no documentation at all. I mean, none. I mean, for like hours, and you're supposed to be doing those hourly roundings and things of that
Yes.
nature. I understand some people are, busy at some point, but
Yeah.
when I asked him, he had no, like, no, I was taking care of this patient and that patient was incredibly sick. Like I asked the charge nurse what went on last night to gather some information. Nothing. And I wrote him out. He was hot. And come to find out, this guy was because I had a friend who actually became the manager of that unit probably about a year later. And I had a friend that she pulled the cameras
Mm.
leaving campus, leaving
Wow. You see? You
hours
see?
for hours. And so that's the reason why, and why the charge nurse didn't know, I have no idea, but that was kind of how it rolled down. So it's definitely for sure. So you talk about the fact that there is an extreme shortage of nursing assistant
Hmm.
right now. So tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, even currently now, I'm in Louisiana and I'm in Baton Rouge in particular. We have last I checked, it was almost 600 openings for certified nurse aides. So with that said, that is a lot considering we are a fairly small city in comparison to other cities. We do have three major hospitals here, but that that's a lot for us. That is extreme. And so I've just been trying to do my part to kind of alleviate some of that strain on the healthcare system here and some of the strain on the nurses because we are getting burned out. I think I read somewhere here that on average the burnout rate starts at around 7 years for registered nurses here, and I can see why, because it's a total strain. Not saying that that's the sole problem of why we're burned out, but it definitely contributes to it. So I've just been trying to do my part with the Heart Academy to push out as many competent CNAs as possible to try to alleviate some of the strain on the healthcare system.
I love it. Now you talked about, because I want to talk a little bit about in the short time that we have left, and I ask that everyone like, comment, and share this podcast. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because previously you had a partner. I want to talk about partners in business. You previously had a partner, and that partner backed out. So tell me a little bit about that and how that went.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. So, originally, when I had the concept and wanted to come up with opening this school, it was a very, very daunting task for me in my head, and it still was. And so that was the whole reason that I got a partner to begin with, because I felt like two heads were better than one, two pocketbooks was better than one, and so we started off good. We partnered with a lot of and shared a lot of the responsibility as far as what we needed to gather information to open the school, et cetera, et cetera. We got about halfway through the process because obviously coronavirus hit during the midst of us trying to open the school. But um, long story short, she ended up backing out. And when that happened, in my head, I was thinking that it probably would have been better had she just not even started because now I had to go back and revise all of the paperwork to reflect that I no longer have this partner. So this included our operating agreements. This included everything that I submitted to the Board of Regents, everything I submitted to the Louisiana Department of Health. And, um, in her defense, life happened on her end. And, you have to prioritize. And so, she had to cut the school short. And, in hindsight, I can see why she did that. And it actually worked out pretty well for me too. But just being able to pivot because while you're while you're in it, it seems like the world is falling apart. It's already a daunting task to begin with to even do something like open a school. Um, but when you start off with help and then the help is no longer there, it seems like everything is falling apart. But I was able to just persevere and persist and push through one day at a time until I got it done.
Good, 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 and that resilience. But I'm glad that
Mhm.
you mentioned the paperwork. It's important that you understand the paperwork because we not too long ago
Wow.
there was this group, and they had this they were all invested in this particular venture, and the paperwork only had one person's name on it. Didn't have all the other people's names on it, and they
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting shafted because of that. I mean, in the upwards of like $70,000. So it's
Yeah.
important, that like when I had business partners, one of the things that I was very clear on is I was going to be very transparent with everyone about everything. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
Everything ran all through my systems. And so I was very transparent about all the numbers, what the metrics look like, opening up the bank account, looking at the bank account
Yes.
numbers, not just
Yes.
spreadsheets, right? Making sure that everybody knew exactly what they had invested and what was coming out. And so it's just incredibly important to do that.
Yeah, that could be. And I think that kind of I don't know about you, but I can say my nursing background kind of helped with that because although I wasn't super business savvy, I've had several businesses before, but they've all been solopreneur type things. So I
Mhm.
didn't really have to worry about partnership as much or paperwork as much. But thinking back, as a nurse and, that documentation, kind of what I mentioned to you about that litigation that I was in. But, documentation is everything. And if it ain't documented, you already know. If it ain't documented, it ain't done. And ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Exactly.
Law is still the law. And so, so knowing that and having that background, I've always had to make sure the paperwork was right, the math was math, and and again, it had a level of transparency in it, so that we both knew what we were getting ourselves into. And I would venture to say that's one of the most important parts in business before you actually get the physical business, whatever it is, up and running. That your documents and your paperwork is on point.
That's exactly right. It is highly, highly important.
Hmm.
Um, One guy yesterday, we were talking, and he asked me about, just being, having a sole proprietorship, and I was like, it's one thing when you have no liability.
Hmm.
Most businesses, you're going to have some type of liability.
Hmm.
Don't have the liability, why not create that wall? Why not go and get your LLC, right? It just doesn't even make sense not to, right?
Right.
So, I was like, that is the number one thing that you need to do. You need to register your business. Number one, you can't do business with the government if you don't at least have an LLC,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so the government is the biggest payer there is. So
Right.
why not do that? It's almost like if a patient comes into a room and they have a telemetry, they have the leads on, in the room, and they have anything that's going on with them. Why not put them on a monitor, right? See
Right.
what's going on, so that you don't get stuck with a patient who is incredibly sick and you have no idea why, right?
Correct. And
Make
you have that safety net behind you. So,
exactly.
you already have your paperwork, everything else will kind of fall in line, but you are absolutely, absolutely right.
As it is for sure. So tell the people where to find you. Tell my
Oh man, they can find me on any social media platform at Marsha X Cage. That's on Facebook. That's on Instagram. That's on actually on TikTok. I've just been on that for a little while. It's Marsharae, Marsharae, and the number one. Also the Heart Academy LLC on Facebook and Instagram.
sweet, sweet, sweet. So I ask that you like, share this, and comment on what you thought about everything that we talked about today. Give us some insight. Give us some questions as to what you would like to see. We have our next master class is coming up in March. And we look forward to you. You can go to VP Nursing, V as in Victor, P as in Paul, nursing.com to register for our next masterclass. You guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. Bye bye.
Bye.